Hello and welcome to this brief walkthrough of AGEod's latest game, Alea Jacta Est, or AGE for short. I will be playing the Roman Civil War scenario set in 50 BC. I will be commanding Caesar's faction, whose holdings include the provinces on the Dalmatian coast. In addition, most of Gaul remains under my control. The bulk of my armies can be found scattered throughout this territory, ready to attack Hispania, who have sided with Pompey and the Senate. Several units are located in northern Italia, including Caesar's own army. Almost all my armies are locked at the start of the scenario, as shown by the padlock symbol on each unit, except for Caesar's own army in northern Italia. I can check the army roster to see exactly what armies are available this turn. Looking at the final column, only Caesar's army seems available. So let's move it to Rome, my first major target of this campaign. Movement can be carried out in several ways, the most straightforward of which is to pick up the army counter and drop it onto the destination province. Alternatively, armies can be moved incrementally by dropping them into individual provinces, one at a time. AGE retains 4 resource pools from which most gameplay factors stem. Victory points calculate the winner when no side wins outright. Engagement points allow decisions such as upgrading cities to be enacted, while morale influences the outcome of battles and helps generate income. Money is used mainly for the recruitment of army units and their replacements. So let's use some of that money to increase the ranks of our military by going into production mode. As you can see, the colour of provinces changed to show if a particular unit can be built there. Green indicates that it can, while red highlights those provinces where it cannot. Let's build a Cisalpina legion in Ravenna and a transport fleet to ferry them into action in case any problems occur in the east. I also add 2 small garrisons to the most distant cities on the coast to provide them with some immediate protection. With my money reserves bottoming out, I go to the production screen, the Dialectus, where I can see the units I have just requested queued up. At the bottom of this screen, I can order replacements by unit type, so I decide to buy 1 replacement element for a legion, supply unit, and 1 for each of the naval types. Now that my funds have almost depleted, it is the end of the first turn. The hosting cycles, which are the periods between turns, have been cut down so that gameplay can be focused on. With the first turn completed, it is time to get up to speed on what has taken place by consulting the message panel. Filters can reduce the lines of messages to those of a certain importance level. Those in black are informative, those in red highlight important events. Clicking on these brings up a pop-up to explain the event in more detail. It looks like the province of Massalia has chosen to remain loyal to Pompey. Another event type is the activation of new leaders throughout the empire. It just so happens that a few of these are available in Rome, so I take this opportunity to separate all but 1 from Caesar's command stack. I will move these leaders to different locations so they can be assigned to command new legions recruited over the course of the campaign. I use another method of movement to position Tolero in Tarentum, where I intend to build a new army. My next operation is the Conquest of Sicily, to reunite the largest Mediterranean island back into the empire. For this task I send Curio and Caesar's command stack, but they will not arrive until the turn after next. Now let's reorganise my forces in Taurasia and prepare them for the campaign to retake Massalia and then Hispania. Let's move them to Genoa. Notice that we already have a fleet in Genoa. We also have one in Neapolis, so let's send the fleet anchored in Neapolis north. Joining these 2 together will make a formidable naval task force with which to blockade Massalia. Now I am ready to make my move on Massalia, its importance shown by the objective star under its plate. So I take the Lugdunum force, commanded by Cassius Trebonius, and prepare to lay siege. Before I move on, I change the posture of this army to orange, or offensive, so that when it arrives it will be ready for action. Now I move Caesar to take charge of this army. Notice how the counter drops directly onto the other when the blue merge icon appears above both. The message in white confirms this. The overview map shows that Hispania is under the total control of Pompey's faction. The key locations are coloured in pink. Taking a look at the objectives window shows us a list of key provinces and their controlling faction. These, when taken, award us the victory points needed to win the scenario. Now it's time to attack the colonies in Hispania. I select the force in Narbo Martius, commanded by Cassius Fabius, and drop it onto Tarraco in Spain. I also move the auxiliaries from Tolosa to Emporia to secure that city as a rearguard in case something bad were to happen to the advance force. Then I make sure to click on the orange posture button to change the attack stance for both forces. It is always a good idea to check the roster towards the end of a turn, so any unused units can be identified and put into action before the end of the turn. Otherwise, any potential benefit they could have brought will have been wasted. Since I have new leaders in Rome, I want to move these to strategic locations where new armies will be built in. Therefore, I move Marcus Antonius to Brundisium and Sulla to Ravenna, ready for any action that may take place in Illyria. Let's continue to augment our forces with a new army in the south of Italia, both in anticipation of future conquests in the east and as a safety measure in case an amphibious operation is launched in the spring by our opponent. In the southern city of Brundisium, I recruit a 3-unit army consisting of 1 legion, 1 cavalry and a supply unit. I also need to reinforce the key southern cities on the Italian peninsula by adding small permanent garrisons to each city of Metapontum, Croton and Luceria. In Rhegium, I recruit a large garrison. Now that I have completed my recruitment, I see that I am rather short of money. I consult the Dialectus again to see a summary of the items queued for production. As I am able to afford some additional replacements, I purchase a troop of Germanic cavalry for Caesar's Lugdunum force, in case they take additional losses during a future battle. And now it is the end of turn 2. During this hosting phase, several battles occurred. Shown here is one such conflict, the Battle of Cerber in Spain, which resulted in a victory for my side. I choose to scrutinise the reports further by clicking on the detail button and then the individual rounds of combat. As the end of this hosting phase draws near, I will need to review the event log again, but before I do so, I should look at how many prisoners were yielded from the battles just fought. I can check the amount I have captured by returning to the objective or concilium window. I will need to fight and win more battles to increase this amount. A quick look at the event log shows a number of new messages. One that stands out is from the Numidian king, Juba. It seems like he doesn't like my faction. I guess that any intervention by us in Africa will be met by stiff resistance. Still, at least we are forewarned and can plan accordingly. Let's return to the concept of prisoners. They are a potential resource in several ways. They can be sold for profit through the SPQR or political window. Alternatively, if I were not that type of dastardly leader, I could use the Imperator window and recruit them into a new legion to swell the ranks of my existing armies. However, in my actual game, I do not yet possess enough prisoners to consider this option, so for the time being, I limit my recruitment to some cheap Gaelic cavalry. Further examination of the message log reveals another historical event. The Pompeian general Cato has fled his command due to the arrival of my army on Sicilian soil. Sicilia is mine. Everything else seems to be going according to plan. Caesar has reached and taken command of the armies besieging Massalia, providing a bonus to their combat ability. With the weather holding up, let's move the combined naval force in Genoa into the seas outside Massalia and blockade the city. If any storms had been present, it would not have been a good idea to move this unit out to sea. To add to the mounting pressure on the rebel city, I also moved the detachment in Genoa to join my besieging forces. Hopefully the total combined military might can now heap enough pressure on the rebel city to force it to surrender. My final initiative is to move another of my unattached leaders in Rome southward. General Orca is a good candidate to command a defensive army for this area, leaving Caesar's command stack free to commence operations elsewhere, such as the North African coast. Now we have reached the final turn for this walkthrough, So far everything has mostly gone to plan. However, I must do something about Massalia, as they are still holding out against my siegers. Perhaps now is the time to play a decision. The surrender decision is ideal to hasten the defeat of a city held by a stubborn enemy. Let's hope that will be enough to swing victory my way. Caesar can now be ordered to march to Tarraco in Spain, where our army has met with some resistance. As mentioned earlier, I need to recruit another army in the south. With fresh funds flowing into our coffers, this is now possible. So I decide to build another slightly different army to previous ones. This time I recruit a legion, some auxiliaries and a supply unit. Whether they are needed to defend my Dalmatian holdings or to fight in the campaign to liberate Hispania remains to be seen. With my money fast running out, I build a single legion in Tarentum as well. Notice that the colours of some provinces change, to indicate that I have a lack of funds to build there. With time running out, I check the current production cube by revisiting the Dialectus window. My final purchase will be a unit of replacement Gaelic cavalry. And now, we have reached the end of this walkthrough. From the AGEod team, I bid you adieu.